Hey, Dr. Joe Show fans, thank you guys so much. We're a growing community. We're a newish channel. We're actually doing like a part 2 to one of our old school ones. Now it feels like so long ago, but it was like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
In my dining room.
This is our second podcast.
It's my favorite one. And this book that you just showed, man, this is Dr. Joe's copy. I got my own. This book comes up in every conversation we have so far on this pod.
Pretty much.
It came up in the inflammation one.
Yeah.
I mean, so we didn't do it justice in that first one. The videography was like more amateur because it was me, but like the content was pure, but there was so much left.
I mean, like you can't cover Anthony J's work in a single podcast.
And we're trying to get him on too.
There's too much. Have you tried to?
I've reached out to him on LinkedIn. Okay. He's silent, but I haven't been persistent.
Maybe they're busy, you know.
Yeah, I haven't been persistent. Maybe we can get it. We can get it.
Maybe he wants us to read his thesis since 5 people read his thesis. Right.
You sent me his thesis and I was gonna read it, and I was in Sedona, and then we ended up doing stuff. But yeah.
We'll read it.
If you're watching, Dr. Anthony J, your book is amazing. We would love to get you on.
Please.
So the last short we did went viral for us.
Mm-hmm.
Fasting.
Mm-hmm.
Humans were meant to fast. Humans were built to fast, you said.
We're built to fast. And the reason I said that is because we can handle it. We're built to fast so that we can have a proper reward system.
Right.
So that, you know, we're in compliance with the laws of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Just if we're sitting like this and we're putting potato chips and soda down the hatch, well, what do you expect to happen other than what happens to most people that do that? So,
yep. There is a fine point though. And some of the comments were trying to say, you're saying to fast for like a month. You never said that. You're talking intermittent fasting. We're talking about like 16 hours, guys and gals.
Now, folks, fasting is it's a very specific word, but it has many different meanings. There's a context. So you have to be specific about what kind of fasting you're talking about. Is it a water fast where all you drink is water for a period of time? Is it a meat fast? Like whatever. So when a lot of people will refer to fasting now, they'll refer to a keto fast. So where you're trying to completely displace all carbohydrates. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of people refer to.
Yep. I lost a lot of weight on keto, and I'll preface this by this is not medical advice. Like Dr. Joe is a doctor, but he's not your doctor. So just this is meant for you to explore, and so you can figure out where you can dig a little deeper if you're curious. And I got curious from this book with atrazine, but let's go there later.
Yeah. Keeping
on the food thing. Omega-6s.
Yeah, omega-6 fatty acids. There has been a lot of information coming from, I'll say, the scientific community saying that omega-6, a certain amount of omega-6 is good for you. It has some functions, but the way some websites, some prominent academically rigorous institutions, their websites, they create the impression that people should just go out and eat this stuff all the time, omega-6. And we were just looking at the article I just showed you from 2017. Mm-hmm. Omega-6 fatty acids will shrink your testicles. And omega-3s will not. So, and actually, I don't remember if the article said that it actually enhances them, but testosterone levels go down with trans fat, but testosterone and testicles will go down.
And that's the segue we wanted for this video. Mm-hmm. Hormones, specifically the book Estrogeneration. Mm-hmm. A lot of males watching this, but females too. I mean, you get breast cancer increases, incidences going higher. This book outlines all this stuff.
Well, yeah, this book didn't have that one reference that we chose. But I mean, you can look up the CDC's website. Breast cancer incidence and prevalence is going like, you know, and so
we discussed this last time. The Steelman case against this as well. Yeah, Dr. Joe, but we're seeing it. We're checking for it more often now. We're seeing it earlier.
Yeah. That's true to a point. We're well beyond the threshold where we can use that as a strong argument.
Yeah.
We have to start looking at how our environment and our food and our water and our bath products, even our textiles, are polluted. Pollution is one of the biggest problems, and it's pollution of all the things that we use, that we put in our body and on our body.
Mm-hmm. There's two camps of what I've seen on Twitter. I'm on Twitter now, and looking at medical community people talking. Mm-hmm. Mostly it's about COVID, which we won't get into, but there seems to be like two schools of thought on almost everything. Everything's polarized, like hyper polarized. You're either completely for something or you're completely against it. And what I'm noticing is a lot of these camps, like let's take aspartame, for example, mm-hmm. right? There's people saying, well, yeah, but these are microscopic levels that they're detecting. And it's not, these are just alarmists. So there's two camps. There's like these doctors that say, well, no, never touch aspartame in your life. And there's this other camp that says, no, it's okay in moderation. It's perfectly safe. And these people tend to go for like more laissez-faire approach. Like, no, it's okay. If the FDA says it's okay, it's okay.
Right.
Right. They tend to be more or less like academic mindset. They tend to be more further removed from actually treating patients, is what I've noticed, just anecdotally.
Well, yeah. And the academically rigorous doctors who actually treat patients are not like those academics that you're talking about. Because when you have a clinical experience and when you see patterns in any community, you're going to see, wow, well, the study didn't, or the studies that I know of didn't really account for this. So yeah, I do think that the purely academics, they have nothing on clinical experience. If they're mm-hmm. not clinically active, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. And why, this is a side topic, but why would a physician like go through medical school, get their license, not want to practice on patients? Like,
there's a number of reasons. I mean, I think people have a change of heart. People mm-hmm. go through it. They see how the practice is done. And, we see all the main specialties, the surgeries and people just say, this isn't for me. And that's okay. Some people are more inclined, for example, to do occupational medicine. It's something that almost nobody talks about, but there's a fast track to OcMed because we need those providers to mm-hmm. specialize in that type of medicine. That's just an example, but yeah, there are people who go in for a business sense, and they get all the medical training and like, okay, so this is the fund of knowledge that a doctor has, mm-hmm. and now I'm going to create a business that monetizes something. Like one of my classmates made one of the most successful study tools called Picmonic. I think that's what it's called. Is it Picmonic?
I don't know.
I think it's mnemonic. Yeah. Anyway, really smart guy. And he made a fabulous business out of it to help young doctors study for their exams. And I think that's fine.
I see. Somewhat related to this topic there's almost two camps of clinicians who do treat patients. Mm-hmm. One that waits until symptoms happen and then react. And the others who tend to spend more time with their patients, maybe because the patients are cash pay. There's a lot of variables there.
Oh boy. Yeah. That's a whole other topic.
We talked about hyperpolarization of science. Mm-hmm. There's also an increasing wealth gap between haves and have-nots. Mm-hmm. And those who have are able to afford these doctors, like Dr. Peter Attia as an example. He wrote a book on this. His book is called Outlive, and his book is about preventing things from happening before they get there. So not just looking at the bare minimum, like LDL he uses as his favorite example. Oh, LDL tells you nothing. But that's what you get covered in your normal insurance plans.
Yeah.
So there's two schools of thought even on here, like the doctors who have certain tools at their disposal and those who don't and are limited. And that's where some of this philosophy kind of gets embedded in them. Well, we can't really, insurance doesn't cover that, so we'll just go with this.
Well, if you think about the most common causes of people, going up and down income brackets and going bankrupt, okay? Healthcare costs is towards the top of that list. Yeah. Last I checked, it was top 3. It might have been number 1. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
But it was up there. And if people don't have the basic tools in their toolbox to maintain their health, then they're never going to be financially secure. And if they're not financially secure, they don't have any chance of climbing Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
But see, this is why this podcast is important. This is why this book is important. This book costs $30.
This book, folks, is an investment in your children's future.
In your children.
Okay. I mean, I could probably list about 10 books that are an investment, but
right.
In the sense of the exposures that your children will have in their life.
Yeah.
This book, gives you tools to reduce those exposures. Okay. If you have a little girl, you're going to help to reduce her risk of breast cancer in her life. If you have a little boy, you're going to reduce the risk that he has low T at age 20. And that maybe he has motivation when he's coming out of high school, instead of a lot of people that just say, I just want to stay home and I'm not motivated to do anything. A lot of that comes from, I think, hormone levels, among other things.
Hormone levels.
But we're just focusing on the hormone side, okay, folks? We could say, there's all these things, but we're just focusing on the hormones.
Today, we're trying to focus on this book, particularly hormones specifically. But these type of podcasts, you may not be able to afford like a cash pay to go get all these tests done, but you can watch a pod, you can read a book, then you can go talk to your provider and say, hey, you know what about this? And if they're dismissive, maybe find someone who isn't.
Yeah.
Right. If you ask long enough, like I've gotten things written for me off label in the past. I had to go ask a few different doctors. I did my research. The doctors were impressed. Wow. Cool. It was actually the Clomid luteinizing hormone.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's get it like off label.
Huh.
And if you go in with the data and the doctor's like, you know what? That's actually, you're right. Like,
that's a good idea, right?
Let's do it. And then they protect their downside by running the test and doing it by the book, because there's protocols even for the off-label stuff. Now, some of those things you have to pay cash to, though. But the Clomid's not expensive.
The old drugs,
old drugs work.
Pennies.
Yeah. So you said preventing. What are some of the things? Because low T is something that's an epidemic in our country. What are some of the top things some people can do to keep their testosterone levels optimal? Let's say they're younger, skewing younger.
So, seed oils. If you don't know what the word seed oils refers to, you need to read about it. You need to find out all the seed oils. Okay. Seed oils captures most of it, but specifically the oils that have been heavily processed, that have omega-6 fatty acids, that have linoleic acid,
there's omega-6 again,
similar to arachidonic acid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the medically trained people, that should ring a bell. Grapeseed, cottonseed, rapeseed, and then soybean oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, just to name a few.
So grapeseed, no good.
It's so heavily processed, because when you process an oil and it's exposed to heat and it goes through all of these processes to purify it, if it's not cold pressed, it's not the real McCoy. It's not the real deal.
So that's a good little hack, like cold press. Look for cold press.
Look for cold press. And how many things are cold pressed these days besides olive oil and avocado oil? And avocado is okay at best because that has some omega-6 in it. But at least it's a better choice than a lot of the other ones, because at least it's been cold pressed. It hasn't been absolutely destroyed from an oxidized
but when
perspective.
you eat like a raw avocado, is there omega-6 there?
Yeah, but that's probably the best way to eat it is as a whole food.
Mm-hmm. So you don't worry about the omega-6 from the raw. You worry about it from the oil.
You
or is it just,
more from the oil than from the raw.
I see, because there's more of it, higher concentration of it in the.
Well, we could reference this book again. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Dr. J, he talks about the relative isoflavone or lignans or something, but basically the phytoestrogen levels in uncooked beans versus bean dip, it goes up by like 3 orders of magnitude. Just from being hyper processed. Like, yeah, the bean dip. So I
love bean dip.
Right? Yeah. I mean, everybody loves the taste of bean dip. And, you know, that's another way that you know that something is bad. If it tastes really good and you can feel the dopamine rush as you taste it and, and you're thinking about the next 10 bites that you're going to take of it, you know, that should be a red flag for people. But of course, the experience is different for everybody.
Right. And as far as let's go with the parabens. I heard you in the office tell a patient, I could smell the parabens from here or something like that.
Yeah,
but people don't understand how dangerous some of these everyday things are that we use.
Well, you know,
if you read this book, guys,
fabric softener,
it's eye-opening.
So the fabric softener you put all over your clothes that makes your clothes reek of fabric softener Lavender. For the next, forever, because you're going to wash your clothes before it wears off again. And you're like, oh, it doesn't smell like fabric softener, so let's wash the clothes and put more fabric softener. You are inundating yourself with parabens. Any mainstream cologne that you're spraying on your body or any mainstream perfume that you're spraying on your body probably is full of parabens.
You don't use any perfumes?
I used to, but since I've actually not since this, but for whatever reason in the last few years, I just haven't wanted to wear.
Have you found any products that are safe?
I did.
Perfume?
I did. I forgot the name, but it's a Canadian company and they use pure essential oils for everything. And it's great. I actually sprayed it on myself today. And
what do you look for though on the bottle or like?
Well, you look for specifically things that say no parabens, no phthalates, non-GMO, no red food coloring, and this whole, usually there's those 4 things.
Mm-hmm. One of the most dangerous things. I'm glad I brought this. It wasn't meant to be a prop.
Plastic.
Even if you say, well, I always keep mine in the fridge. Do you know last time I went to Costco, I got a flat of these things, how hot the bottles were from sitting in the truck all day and sitting in the warehouse all day.
Yeah.
And this was a Costco in California, not Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine the ones in Arizona.
Oh, yeah. Especially in Phoenix.
So what's happened? Walk us through what's happening when you drink something, even if you cooled it again.
Well,
all the
so the BPSs and the BPAs, now guys, if you want to see the structures, I don't exactly remember. Go to the original Estrogeneration podcast, please, and just
we'll link to it underneath.
Open up the original thing where it showed the molecules. But the BPS, the BPAs, those are slightly polar molecules, and so they just get liberated. They're floating around in the water. And now, whether or not they're collecting at the top of the water or whether they're distributed in there, they're going right into your body, no matter whether you're drinking the water ice cold or whether you're drinking it at room temperature or warm. Because
so once they're in, even if you get it cool again, you're not putting them back on the plastic.
No, they're not going back into the plastic. It's the same reason why the clear plastic wrap on the meat you buy at the supermarket, that's full of phthalates. As soon as it touches the meat, that meat starts sucking up the phthalates.
But it's unavoidable. I mean, you buy meat with plastic on it.
I have been. If you want to reduce that exposure, then you go straight to the butcher and say, hey, I want that cut that's sitting over there, or can you cut this for me right now? And then they'll wrap it up in wax paper. Right?
Yeah, I see. So you go with that option.
I've been trying to do that more recently. It takes a little more time, but it's worth it. it's a good habit.
You think these things like exposure, these plastics, I just drank from that today. I mean, and I'm aware we did the podcast.
Yeah.
You think exposure, these things just add up, like little by little? Or?
I think it adds up cumulatively. There's a big difference between a 5-year-old drinking out of a plastic bottle and a 50-year-old just now starting to drink out of plastic bottles, right? But, you know, how many 50-year-olds now have never drank out of a plastic bottle? Probably none or almost none. So that's why, you know, this is most relevant to the younger little humans that are relying on the adults to be adults and help to protect them and give them a safe environment to grow.
Well, now most of the baby bottles are plastic. People put them in the dishwasher.
And even then they try to make them BPA free or, you know, that type, whatever, 7, I don't even know what number plastic they're on now.
But they usually say BPA free. Anthony J says it.
Anthony J says, well, no,
BPS,
you're just switching it out for another thing. I mean, arguably the two best plastics are type 2 and type 5, HDPE. And I don't remember what type 5 was. But HDPE, high density polyethylene, that one is the best one for like water pipes.
And Dr. J says in the book, just a quick way to kind of remember, the clearer the plastic is, the worse it is.
Yes.
Health wise. So you want to look for a cloudy.
Yeah. If there's plastic, the plastic needs to be cloudy. I remember he says that in the book.
Corporations don't like those because selling wise, it looks dirty.
Yeah, you can't showcase your food. You can't showcase that steak.
And I gotta admit, this looks crystal clear. I put electrolyte coffee in here.
Oh no, you put coffee in there?
Electrolyte, but it was cold.
Okay, but so you put caffeine in a plastic bottle?
Yes.
Do you remember what Anthony J said about that?
No.
Caffeine pulls more BPAs out of that thing.
Wow.
You said it in here.
Do you want to go like a little bit on that? Because I did put caffeine in here.
Yeah, so caffeine.
I just basically extracted more.
You extracted BPA. More caffeine into your drink. Or I mean, sorry, more of the BPA into your drink with caffeinated beverage versus if you had just drank water.
Wow.
Yeah, so think about the caffeinated
and people do all the time with Starbucks
drinks that are in these plastic bottles.
Yeah. Or Starbucks, like let's say you go buy a iced coffee, right? They give it in a plastic cup. Let's say you go to the supermarket, leave it in your car. You come back, it's like a little less cold. It warmed up a little in the car.
Maybe there's one ice cube left, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you drink it. Room temperature now. Is it enough to get the BPA in room temperature?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
Can the BPA leak with cold also?
In theory, I mean, probably at a reduced rate, you know.
Wow.
So like the lesser of two evils here is
yikes
is to have your plastic bottles with whatever liquid in them perpetually at some arbitrarily cold temperature with relation to ambient room temperature. That's the theory. Okay.
And I've been saving glass bottles.
But how do you know? Like, how do you know what temperature the bottles went through to get onto the shelf on the store?
Right. It has to be on a truck. Then it's in someplace like Costco warehouse or Albertsons or wherever. They're all the same setup. Hot truck.
Yeah. If you got it
on the road. Hot warehouse.
Yeah.
Maybe for days. Yeah. Scary stuff.
But what are you going to do? You got to invest in just conscientiousness. I'm going to get a steel container and I'm going to put my own purified water in there. I'm just going to keep it with me. And it's better for the environment, right? Isn't plastic one of the biggest problems in the ocean?
Yes.
And you know, what are we doing to reduce plastic? We're doing almost nothing. There's that documentary on garbage about how what China buys our garbage and then they sell it to Indonesia and then Indonesia throws it in the ocean, or is it the other way around? I don't know, but one of them buys it and sells it to the other and they throw it in the ocean.
Whoever, they play musical chairs for who wants to look bad when they get caught.
Yeah.
Indonesia said, we'll do it. Yeah. So what is the danger of the BPA though, like health outcome wise?
Well,
Cancer?
It's more agonizing of estrogen receptors, just like all the other molecules in here. And I don't remember if that was one of the ones that that affects fish fertility, or was that atrazine?
Atrazine.
Atrazine affects the fertility. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. That's the one where Alex Jones got in trouble
because of atrazine.
Well, he said, you know how he's like a comic book character. He said they've done tests, folks, and the water turned the fish gay.
Oh yeah.
So it's hyperbole, but like the premise is correct. When I read this book, I thought to myself, Alex Jones was right. He's just like a cartoon character.
I mean, I wonder, like, is he legit going to have stone tablets made about him? I mean,
he probably or he'll be executed.
I would expect that based on the outcomes of what he's.
Yeah, one of the two. I mean, he's definitely playing with fire. But so BPA, BPS, which when they say BPA free, doesn't necessarily mean.
Yeah, it could just be BPS.
BPS. Estrogen receptor plays a huge role in breast cancer.
In some of them.
In some of them,
right?
ER positive.
Yeah, because they have to get a biopsy usually and find out, is it HER2 new positive, ERPR positive.
Yep. So that's one of the other examples. But the testosterone. So there's a lot of theories around the decline of testosterone. One of them is the internet. One of them is, which means access to porn, access to Insta hoochies, who, I mean, our ancestors, back to the caveman, here's an easy short for Daniel to make, right? In the caveman days, you would go weeks, maybe, seeing like a few like really attractive women. Now, you pull up your phone, you got seconds, and it's like unlimited. And that's before we get into the AI making hoochie images. Well, you know that's next, right?
Well, yeah, they're already working on.
They already have it
on these machines that simulate like that whole experience.
Yeah,
and
so it wasn't bad enough that we have like unfettered access to porn.
Yeah,
and all these young kids out there, they've got it, and you don't even need like to go to like porn websites. You can just go on Twitter. It's there. Elon's trying to police it, but it's there. Well, if that wasn't enough, now you got AI porn.
Yeah.
Where the women are like idealistic women. It's not like a real woman. You know, real women have like certain flaws that kind of brings character, right?
Yeah.
These are like just what's the best feature of any woman you could think of.
But do real women have flaws though?
Well, they think they do.
They think they do. The perfect.
Everyone has a flaw.
Like the perfect symmetry that's depicted in these rendered graphics.
The golden ratio, right?
This perfect, symmetry and ratios and everything, and it's just not realistic. And I think video games with excessively busty women. Video games with all these unrealistic outfits, and besides the unrealistic factor of, well, if a woman had breasts that size, like, and I don't think they would really be wanting to wield a sword. And then they would need to have armor, and I just imagine the fibrotic damage to their breasts later after they go through all these battles, assuming they survive the battles,
right?
Assuming that they have the upper body strength to fight against, an enemy who's a man with the same size sword, assuming they survive that, right?
Right. But that's more of a dopamine.
It's just this dopamine thing where these, where these mostly boys are watching these games and these shows and these things that depict women in a particular way, when they spend all their time looking at this. And then when they see a real woman, they don't know what to do.
Right.
And then they complain that they can't get women. Well, go back to the caveman days, right?
Yeah. You'd have a tribe, like you'd see like 20 people maybe for a month.
the people that the men that got to have sex were the ones who were the strongest, who could protect the females, and the females selected the men who did that back in the day. And that hard wiring is no different today. A lot of men have failed. And part of that is, I mean, I think men have been programmed to think that men are a failure.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that society doesn't need men, and that we can just use fertility centers for like everything. Like, oh, well, let's just store everything in the sperm banks, and men are just irrelevant, and let's just discard them. That feels like the spirit of what's floating around right now. And it's kind of creepy.
Yeah. And it's only getting worse. Virtual reality is going to be next. You won't, Gary Vaynerchuk, this guy, our videographer has Gary Vaynerchuk's book here. He was one of the first YouTube influencers. He teaches people how to make podcasts and stuff. Like he kind of encourages people to do this. He said, we're going to come into an era, and he said this like in 2009, where online will be more real than offline. And he said this in 2009. It sounded a little bit crazy then, but you can kind of see it now with VR. Apple's making the headset.
Oh, VR. Yeah.
I mean, kids these days would rather be on Instagram than be at an actual like in-person event, like a party or something.
Yeah.
They'd rather be on an Instagram. Mm-hmm. They'll go to a place like Sedona just for the picture to post and then come back. Like, it's not even about the actual place. It's just to show people online that they went there.
It's the same thing when people go and see their favorite band at concert, and everybody has their phone out recording.
Right.
And then the artist is like, what the hell are you people doing? Like, you paid extra to be standing, in the first 10 rows of whatever people standing there. Yeah. And you take out your phone, and then you make sure you're getting a good shot, but you're not even looking at us, at the band.
Right.
And that's the perfect caricature of how stupid phones have made everybody. So, and I'm guilty. Everyone's guilty. My last Pumpkins concert I went to in San Diego, I was one of those people with a phone. And Billy Corgan, he was looking like either straight at me or straight next to me, and I felt really guilty. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to record anymore.
When was this?
It was 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, that was his Oceania tour.
I see.
That was the last time I saw
in San Diego.
Yeah, that was the last chance I had. That was the last time I had to do something like that. So,
but the point of all this is the last episode was about inflammation, food, and you. Excess of food brings more disease.
Yeah.
Well, here's excess of stimulus, right? Brings low T. Excess of artificial crap, excess of plastics, excess of fragrances,
microestrogen,
which
is in grains and coffee. So
we're now living in a world, and we've been here for a while, so probably since the Industrial Revolution, where everything's a disease of excess. Almost
everything's a disease of excess, and yet and yet more and more people are going bankrupt. It's interesting.
Well, yeah, because things are cheaper. So tech is a deflationary force. So plastic, if you were only going to make like one plastic bottle, that would be super expensive. Like, there's no economies of scale. But when you can scale it and say, hey, I can make like millions of these things. Yeah. It costs fractions of a penny to make one. That's when you get excess. That's deflationary force because there's demand for it.
Yeah, it's exactly like
imagine a caveman trying to make a plastic bottle. I mean, why am I going to do this?
He's like, I don't care. I got the stream. I got I got the waterfall over there.
Exactly. Yeah. So the Industrial Revolution kind of brought about a lot of this stuff. It brought about a lot of good. Like, we do also ignore the fact that life expectancy is increasing. Post-COVID is the first time it decreased in the United States. But like, if you look on a macro level,
Ed Dowd's life insurance data.
Yeah, but we don't.
That was something else.
We don't want to get into that, but we keep bringing back caveman days like it's a good thing, but they didn't live till like more than 30 usually.
Yeah, I mean, back then probably infection, trauma, and smoke. Like whenever fire came into the picture,
I see.
You know, lacking in the education it takes for you to know, like, well, you know, don't breathe the smoke,
right?
And you're just dying of exposure,
right?
You know, like for example, I got a lot of friends from Alaska, and I've never tried to survive in Alaska, but in Alaska, it's the wet cold that kills you. And if it's not that, it's going to be any one of the gigantic animals that live up there that people might disrespect and not handle appropriately. So,
and over there, talk about omega-3s. They were eating that before they knew what that was, before they knew it was good for you. Mm-hmm. Did they get any exposure omega-6s back then in Alaska?
You mean how long ago?
Like when the Eskimos. I mean, even now, they're still living like that.
Well, if they're adhering to their original ways, then they're probably not getting exposed to omega-6. But
the only way back then for omega-6,
if you talk about the polar bears that were queried in this book,
yeah,
even the polar bears aren't going to escape the parabens in the air and in the water.
Poor polar bears, man.
Yeah, but I think they're doing fine. They adapt.
One of the things that really stuck out to me in this book was atrazine.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
was it 80 million gallons?
Yeah.
In the US.
So I'm usually anti-regulation. Like I'm more of a libertarian, but when I read that European Union banned atrazine a decade ago.
Was it the UK or was it the EU?
The EU.
The EU did? The EU.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's actually a positive argument for regulation. Sometimes it's like a good thing. Even Dr. J make that argument.
Mm-hmm.
RFK Jr. is running on this premise too.
Well, when you have enough data that can demonstrate harm, which we have, I mean, Anthony did all the work. He did all the work.
How come no one else talked about atrazine though? Like,
I mean, atrazine was the first time. I mean, so the first time I heard about atrazine was this book, and
me too.
That kind of surprises me.
Me too.
I mean, we've all heard of glyphosate.
And you went to med school. They never talked to you about atrazine there?
Well, that's, you know, the toxicity of chemicals like this is a niche thing that is usually with the toxicology side. And maybe if I had gone through enough of my toxicology manuals, I would have ran across it. But they're more interested in the really nasty things like paraquat and DDT and all those other things that heavily regulated or banned.
Mm-hmm.
But
so atrazine, just for the viewers and listeners, and maybe for a short, what do we got to do to avoid? How can we? I mean, it's pretty hard. We live in Yuma right now.
From atrazine, you go organic. Ideally, you grow your own food. You develop your own garden, and you basically promote subsistence agriculture in your community. That's the only way that you're going to minimize your exposure to atrazine.
Where is atrazine? Like at the supermarket, right?
It's
produce section.
It's everywhere. It's all over the place. And then even the organic section, you have to wonder, well, did any atrazine get over there? Because there's all the regulations on organic, like, you know, the soil has to be, you know, this clean, this free of stuff for this many years, and then they can't have been stored next to each other in the truck, I think. And there's a few other things, but this stuff goes and gets in the air.
Yeah, it gets in the air.
So,
but in EU, it's been banned for like a decade. What is the main like health outcome concern for atrazine?
It is carcinogenic and it is estrogenic.
So knowing that, I would be curious. I'm just thinking now out loud. EU cancer rates, incidences compared to US. I mean, because that's a variable that has been removed from there, right? But there's cancer's a multivariable thing. Yeah. Do you think it plays a large enough role to where they would make a difference, or it's just?
I think there's so many other things that cause cancer. Yeah. I think this is hits from so many different molecules and exposures
Aluminum in your deodorant.
Yeah, aluminum, zirconium, tetrachlorohydrex.
He doesn't talk about antiperspirants in here, right? With the aluminum, the heavy metals.
I don't know.
It talks more about the scents of the deodorant.
Yeah, it talks about the parabens in the deodorants, yeah.
So the parabens. So that in Europe is not banned.
Yeah.
The rest of this stuff in Europe is okay.
I mean, the chemicals he's referring to are basically organic chemistry chemicals. And the aluminum, zirconium, tetrachlorohydrex is inorganic chemistry. So maybe he was really focusing on the organic chemistry side.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think people need to pay more attention to what they're putting into their body or on their body? It's not always about food, like this book tells us.
It's an investment in your health. Whether you're 2, 20, 70, it's never too late to invest in your health by making healthier choices. Plain and simple.
And the more you educate yourself, how would you recommend someone educates themselves? Eventually, we're going to do a scientism podcast. But if you, let's say, okay, Dr. Joe, I'm going to go self-educate myself.
Yeah.
So I'm going to find all these articles that showed me that what you just told me is wrong.
Yeah.
Because there's these other studies that said, hey, well, it's okay.
Yeah. So you have to look at the funding of the study first. Yeah. So look at where the money came from. So for example, all the and this literature review, we already talked about it in Diet Zero Light episode 1. I think it was Dr. Walden or somebody. I think his name was Ralph Walden, if I'm not mistaken. He did this review on all the aspartame studies to date, and every single industry funded one. And when I say industry funded, I mean funded by industries that produce and sell aspartame. Every industry funded study showed that aspartame was safe. Every single one. And then 92%, I believe, of the non-industry funded studies showed that it was not safe. Okay. So you got to look at the funding, number one. Now we have another level of secrecy here. And I say secrecy because people don't read papers anymore. Okay. You can hide it in plain sight and people don't read. But now the second level is now you'll find papers that say authors have nothing to disclose. But then you do some background research on those authors and you look at where they work. And they work for firms or industries or groups who have their claws in deep
They're suppliers,
in these industries. But but I don't have any financial conflicts of interest. I did this study on my own and blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, what's your salary? Right. So it's really tough. So there's a lot of biochemistry that's for and against the use of omega-6. But like I said, Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic, I'm going to say it, folks. Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic, their websites promote omega-6. Okay. But Mayo Clinic and Cleveland Clinic, you guys forgot all the research saying that omega-6 increases inflammatory cytokines, interleukins 1, 6, TNF alpha, interferon gamma, and it makes your balls shrink. Okay. So you guys need to go back to your website and you guys need to figure that out.
What do they say it's good for?
They say it's good for cardiovascular health or something. They say it's part of a healthy cardiovascular system, but the way it's delivered in a way so that, let's just throw all this into our bodies. And it's in all the processed food. Right. You get something in a box of something, you use store-bought salad dressings, folks. Okay. Now let's just look at a typical bottle of store-bought salad dressing. Let's just say some generic ranch dressing in a plastic bottle, and you bought it at, I don't care what store you bought it from. First, you're going to look at the ingredients and you're going to see probably soybean oil. Okay.
Biggest.
And it's in a plastic bottle. So you remember what I said about the caffeine in the bottle? The caffeine pulls those molecules out of the plastic. Well, what do you think all these nonpolar molecules are going to do to these mostly nonpolar molecules that agonize estrogen receptors? Okay. So you start throwing this on your salad and you think, I'm eating healthy. I'm eating a healthy salad. No, you're not. You order a salad from a restaurant. Most of the salad is sprayed with propylene glycol. That's another topic we talk about, the preservative chemicals sprayed all over restaurant food. You know, the reason why you can make a salad that tastes almost exactly the same at your house and as a restaurant, and yet the one that you made, it doesn't make you feel like you ate a brick. It doesn't make you feel ill afterwards, you know, or it doesn't cause all these allergies to flare up in your body when you make it from scratch.
How would you, if you go to restaurants
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to be rude, how do you assess whether it's going to make you feel that way or not?
You don't go.
You don't go. There's good restaurants out there. There's good ones. No.
Well, I challenge any restaurants who think that their food doesn't have any of these preservatives like propylene glycol. I challenge you to comment on our video and tell me about your restaurant and tell me why your food is safe to eat.
So preservative health outcomes, just in a nutshell. What is
preservative health outcomes? Well, we could just look at something easy like benzoic acid. It's a carcinogen. Benzoic acid. That's a carcinogen. But something Starbucks started to do with their frappuccinos in the glass bottles, they used, do you know what the preservative is in those?
Nope.
Vitamin C.
Vitamin C.
They're smart. Mm-hmm. They're using a healthy preservative. And they're putting their product in a glass bottle. See, that was smart.
Shout out to Starbucks. You think we get them as a sponsor? We did say they put coffee in plastic.
Well, too. Again, I don't know where their coffee really is sourced from, because if you don't get it from the right sources, there's an 80% chance that coffee might have those mycotoxins in them.
Mold, toxins.
Again, you know, I just pointed out that one good thing that they did. Life Boost coffee is still probably one of the cleanest coffees that you could ever get your hands on.
Drink it every morning thanks to you. That the Biotics brew with the bifidobacteria. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. Hazen. If we had Hazen, we get Hazen on this show one day.
Oh man, we got to get her here.
She told me something very similar to what Dr. Smith told me. She said people from Europe or people from Europe. I think she used that example. They don't eat mangoes. Their microbiome's not used to that genetically.
Yeah.
And they come here, they eat kiwis, mangoes, all this tropical stuff. What's that doing to the microbiome? Smith told me the same thing. Mm-hmm. You don't eat fruits off season.
Yeah, you're not supposed to.
He said, eat the fruits of the season. Why? Is that preservatives?
Well, what's that saying about eating unripe fruit? When they take the fruit off of the tree before it's ripe, they expect the fruit to ripen on the way to being transported.
Right.
You know, so that's why it's impossible to eat perfectly fresh fruit anywhere unless you live in the place that grows the fruit.
Right.
So, so that ripening, I wish we had a botanist or somebody.
But how does the technology work of like eating foods off season? If you just break it down a little, like how is that even possible? Is it because of preservatives?
You mean how were the fruits produced even though they shouldn't be around?
Yeah, like today.
I think they probably imported them from a place where they grow year round.
So then they got to do preservatives.
Yeah. A lot of fruits are preserved by just keeping them in particular types of paper, cardboardy containers that somehow preserve them. It's like a cellulose type of deal.
Because people don't think these things. They just think, oh, it's a fruit. I'm eating fine. You know,
I mean, I can't help but wonder if there's a relationship between where you live, what grows where you live, and that you should try to eat only what grows where you live. And Yuma, that would be pretty hard. I mean, what grows here? Dates?
Get strawberries,
blueberries,
dates. You'd be having good bowel movements.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure you'd get any
Cactus,
work.
You eat some nopal.
Nopales. Yeah. The hypoglycemic nopales.
But no one does that now. We're a flat world. You could eat whatever you want.
I have met some patients that eat nopales.
Yeah.
And I have noticed that those patients seem healthier in general.
Yeah.
I would
say the Mexicans know ancient medicine. without knowing what those things are.
Yeah.
My wife's mom, 80 years old, healthy as like a 50-year-old maybe.
Yeah.
Man. And she's been starting to put things in glass bottles after I told her. I don't do my own advice. She follows it though. She puts glass bottles, everything.
Dude, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, it's like I did it today because I wanted the electrolyte coffee.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, normally I don't. I drink from glass. But point is, she knows the chaparral plant.
Mm-hmm.
And it grows throughout Mexico.
Chaparral, that's
gobernador in Spanish.
That's creosote.
I don't know what the molecule is, but it's strongly anti-inflammatory.
So
and she'll make a tea out of it.
But that's that bush with like the white puffy flowers.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure that's creosote.
Okay.
And you run your hand over it and it leaves that smell on your hand.
Yeah.
Oh, that's creosote.
So she'll make a tea out of that.
She drinks it?
Sick. Yeah.
Cool.
And she just gets it. She hates when they develop around here because one time, you've seen where I live, they're developing new homes. She's actually sad for the plants they're ripping out. She's like, why are they taking that plant out? That's good stuff.
Yeah.
This is like the old school mentality, man. But like you said, they lack usually their health is things they lack. Antibiotics. Mm-hmm. Modern day medicine.
I should give you some chaparral seeds.
Yeah,
because I love it. I got some sprouting in my place.
Okay, around my house,
there's a particular place where they like to grow, and I tried sprouting them in pots. You can't sprout them in pots, and you have to leave them in their pods. All the instructions on the internet about how to sprout them is totally wrong.
Right.
It's
But do you think we'll ever go to a place where? Because now everything's like excess, right? Disease of excess, and let's get back to food.
Yeah.
Preservatives keep foods longer, like so you can sell them longer. Mm-hmm. Steroids to keep the cows bigger and make more milk.
Steroids and antibiotics.
Genetically modified GMO.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think society will catch up to the fact that that's not good? Like, is there already an awakening? And will it ever go back to agrarian times, or are the conveniences of post-industrial revolution just so great and we'll just fix it with another pill?
Well, I think that the impulse is to try to just keep making pills for problems that are easily prevented. You think
that's
like nobody's talking about planting more trees to mitigate the supposed CO2 problem.
Right.
And I just think that's fascinating because, well, aren't trees good? Right.
But the pill, let's go with the pill thing, right? Well, don't worry, Dan. And you work in clinical research, Dan, we're making we have 5 new products in the pipeline for this and 5 new ones for that. So it's okay. The incidences in cancer, we're getting better at treating it. Maybe one day even curing it. You think that's the more likely road we travel down?
I think it is.
And is that good or bad? This is a philosophical question.
I think it's bad. Because.
But live longer though. What if you live longer?
Live longer with what quality of life? Because going back to what's natural and remembering what is sacred. That's what we need to do.
In order to do that, though, we have to topple all the advancements of industrial revolution.
Well, I mean, look at the very clear cut good advancements. Okay, the basic soap, not antibacterial soap, just regular old soap. Soap was massive. Okay.
Yeah.
Penicillin and the proliferation of different antibiotics thereafter, massive impact. Okay, that's why infectious disease. I mean, that's I understand why infectious disease doctors go into that field because it's cool, because it's like cowboy medicine. Basically, it's like sometimes things don't fit and you got to just do the best you can. I mean, that's why it's cool. Mm-hmm. Everything else is algorithm based. Everything else is designed to put expensive medications in the spotlight and not the human condition. Okay. Our first podcast on CoQ10 CoQ10 deficiency.
You got me on that, man. It's good stuff.
And I have friends and family of patients that tell me, he said, hey, I started taking that CoQ10 and my energy level went up, and now I'm exercising, or now I'm doing this, and now I'm doing this.
Now I'm sleeping better.
Yeah. I've heard that too. If more doctors knew the impact of CoQ10 on blood pressure.
But the fact that we have CoQ10, though,
the fact that
is
it's
because
available,
of its industrial revolution. I mean,
well, yeah, it was discovered by biochemists, I assume, in like 1957.
So you're saying you are saying there's a world where there is a best of both worlds.
There is. I mean, we need the pharmaceutical industry to develop therapeutics. What we don't need is for unchecked corruption in the pharmaceutical industries.
And that's one of the side effects.
And that's where David Martin comes in. Okay. David Martin, his work, if folks don't know David Martin, you guys need to look him up, find him. He's on YouTube. The guy is brilliant. Okay. He just did a big talk at Brussels. But that's another topic. His firm, goes after, the inhumane things that pharma industries have done to peoples of multiple countries, mostly Africa. Africa has been victimized by pharma industries, and they get away with it. Most of it.
They used to start getting away. Then it's changing.
Oh, then they're probably changing with it.
They are. What they're doing, they're buying up the small biotechs that are pure. Mm-hmm. Me and Dr. Smith joke all the time. Mm-hmm. Let's work with these guys before they get corrupted.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're small. They have the, what is it? 510, where they switch they take it already approved drug, repurpose it, reformulate, completely new indication. We have 3 studies like this right now. Really good drugs, too. Safety profile established. Pentosan polysulfate sodium, one of them. Mm-hmm. Ibuprofen, another. I can't get into more than that, but
yeah,
I signed CDAs. But yeah, one was developed for urinary cystitis. Now it's being used for completely different indication. And
metformin for wellness.
Metformin, right? Yeah. Although the more you study it, the more you start seeing, well, there's also negative thing. All these things have something negative to you. So point is, there is, I think, a world where responsible drug development, I think.
Yeah.
There's so much money in it.
And that's the bottom line. The bottom line is the dollar.
But you want to incentivize also, or else you can't get venture capital to come in.
And that just makes me think of Star Trek, because the show Star Trek, it's in a world. It's not in a world. It's actually in outer space. But it's after Earth got to a point when profit was not needed, and then you almost wonder that the caricature of humans is the Ferengi, where it's all about making a profit, and then that was just intrinsic to their species, and it's unfortunate, but maybe we're doomed to be the Ferengi.
Maybe.
Or we could evolve and go beyond. And
do you think the answer is more regulation, or just revamping our existing regulatory framework and starting over with something else?
We might have to start over, and that does not look pretty.
Nope, because that all the progress we have built up needs to be paused or reversed.
The peer review process needs to be looked at closely.
Dr. J talks about it.
He talks about peer review and
in our lifetime, this is not happening.
The reform's not going to happen in our lifetime. I mean, the hope is that, in a few hundred years, if we're still here, right?
Yeah.
That's if that big thing doesn't happen in 2040, like I keep talking to you about.
There's a group of scientists on Twitter I follow. I actually am somewhat involved with them. So they have this whole concept, decentralized crowdsourcing studies. Mm-hmm. Bring scientists together. You get the funding through crypto. Everything's decentralized. Everyone owns a share. Patients included.
It's like a PMA. It's like a private medical association.
Basically, sort of. Yeah. I mean, the powerful thing is patients can also be funders, owners. They have a stake.
Yeah, it's like a co-op of medical research and medical care.
Do you think there's a chance for this model to take off?
There's already people trying to build these things.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how they proliferate. I mean, it's almost, I almost imagine them being this separate community that's going to be isolated, and it's going to be like, oh, we don't talk about them. It's just going to be like this,
the fringe,
this like black box, and it's like, oh yeah, that's in that other state, and nobody knows what's going on over there. I mean, what is it going to be censored? Like news is censored in China? Is it going to be the same thing?
But that's how all change kind of happens. Like they're fringe, they're weird.
Yeah.
Then it becomes okay, but it's never going to have this use case. Then it gets a use case. It's like, okay, but it's never going to be the establishment. Then it becomes the establishment. Then it gets corrupted. And while that's happening, a new fringe is starting.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the evolution of progress, more or less. Yeah. Probably missing some steps, but it's interesting to talk about this stuff. Maybe it's like prepares us for scientism. You want to do that one next? I
would love to do scientism.
This is almost
next.
Like an intro to scientism.
Yeah, it's an intro to scientism.
This was like an outro to estrogen and inflammation, and an intro. We'll come back to all this stuff.
I think we're going to come back. I mean, if folks want more of a particular topic, please comment if there's a topic that you want to hear more about, because we talk about a lot of different things.
Intermittent fasting seems to be one that people.
Intermittent fasting, that is one of the hardest things for people to do. But once people get it, they got it. And you can cure.
I'm living proof, man.
People can cure type 2 diabetes with fasting.
Type 2 diabetes is insane. I cured my irritable bowel syndrome with it.
That's amazing.
Keto and intermittent fasting. So I don't know which one it was. It wasn't a good clinical trial because I did both. Okay. I did keto with intermittent fasting.
Interesting.
But no more IBS, even when I gained weight back. My high was 220. My low after keto and fasting after a year was 170 something.
Huh.
Now I'm back to like 190. I've been weightlifting too, but like 190, IBS doesn't come back. High blood pressure, which I battled with because of renin, tends to creep up around the 200 mark for me. So if I stay under 200 pounds,
you're good.
I'm more or less good, but now I'm on CoQ10. That's another variable, which is why
big variable.
Life is messy and clinical trials tend to be pristine. Mm-hmm. That's another paradigm that needs to be kind of shattered, I think.
Well,
clinical trials are designed to be pristine, but life is messy.
Well, how do you put all these regulations on a clinical research study? Like, oh, you got to fit into this little box, and then how do I take it and give it to a patient?
Yeah,
who has all these problems? Like, oh, well, you're on this and you're on this and you're on this. Well, we didn't say not to use it. Well, yeah, but you designed your study without those things.
Right. Well, the FDA comes back later post-marketing and says, hey, where were these AEs in the study? Let's put a black box warning or do another trial.
Yeah.
But it's cheaper for them, the drug companies, to do that because they're still getting sales. Mm-hmm. So
like semaglutide, that report that came out of somewhere, I think the UK or something, but there's now reports of suicidal ideation with people who are taking semaglutide.
Ozempic?
Whichever one. I mean, it's all the same.
Could be either one.
Wegovy, Ozempic, and what is it? Ribelsis. That's the oral one. But yeah, there's reports of a risk of suicide. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I got some people on it. I haven't seen it. They haven't told me yet, but ever since I heard about it, I've been watching for it. But,
wow. So maybe scientism, you guys let us know in the comments what's next. We're going to start getting guests too. We want to get like Dr. J on. That would be so cool to zoom in.
Dr. J, we want you on the show, please. Dr. J, we want you on the show, please.
That's a YouTube short right there.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to leave for the audience members? Starting to get a bunch of fans, man.
Well, I just hope folks can find some of these discussions useful, and maybe it'll stimulate you to read some stuff and dig and deeper. Make your life better.
Yep.
And then you'll share a comment and you'll teach us something.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Thank you, Dr. Joe. Thank you guys for watching.
Thank you. Bye-bye.